In my opinion, one of the most enjoyable things to do in Minecraft is begin a new world and build your starter house. There's something very special about it. Maybe it's the nostalgia from when I first started playing this game, maybe it's the excitement from starting a new world, or maybe, plain and simply, it's just fun to do. Now, I've made quite the number of starter houses in this game, some from my own worlds throughout the years, but most of them coming from tutorials I've made here on my channel. The point is, I've gotten quite good at it. So today I'll be sharing 10 of my favourite tips on how to go about building your very own starter house. Before we get started here, I do just want to emphasise that these tips are about starter houses, not a small hole you dig yourself into on the first night, nor a long-term survival base. I'm talking about a little build that you can use as base camp whilst you get yourself a bit more underway in your world. Now that we're all on the same page, let's begin. First up, let's talk about location. Now, unless you want your starter house to be located nearby your main base, whenever you do eventually get round to building it, where you set up camp might not be as important as you think. I'm not saying you should just build it anywhere. Of course, take the time to pick a good place, but don't spend hours scouring around your world for the perfect spot, because most likely you won't be staying in your starter house for very long. What I'd recommend you do is, whilst you're adventuring around your world doing the many tasks of the early game, just make a note of the locations you like the look of. Then, when you're ready to build, you can head back to one of them. Just maybe wait till you're a bit more geared up before you go out of your way and find the ideal base location for the future. As I said, it depends on whether you want your starter house to be nearby your main base, but it can be fun to pack up and leave it standing as a relic of your world that you can come back to and visit in the future. Keeping with the theme of eventually moving out of your starter house onto bigger and better things, it's good to keep in mind that you don't have to build anything revolutionary for your first build. Just a simple wooden house, for example, is perfectly fine. So maybe keep your expectations at a good level for this house and save the big plans for later on in your world. I only say this because building in the early game can take quite a long time. Most of that comes down to resource collecting, as you only have stone or iron tools, maybe a diamond pickaxe if you're lucky. But even making a simple structure can be quite time consuming, so don't set your sights too high and then lose motivation before you've even really gotten started. Keep it small, keep it simple, and don't try to do too much before you're ready. Just wanted to quickly say that if you're enjoying this video and you're finding it helpful, a like rating would be greatly appreciated, and you're more than welcome to subscribe for more building guides like this one. Thank you. Now, if you're planning to keep the house small as I advised, you're not going to have tons of room, which is okay because you don't need that much room in a starter house. Plus, I think the best kind of houses are the ones that feel very cramped, and yes, I do mean that in a good way. Building something on the smaller side can lead to having a super cozy interior that can be just lovely to live in, even if it's for a short while. You can save the big open storage room and massive master bedroom for your next house. Since you're not going to have tons of room, it's good to try and be efficient with your space. My absolute favourite trick for starter houses is to use barrels in the build itself. Not only do they look great aesthetically, but they can also be accessed from the inside and used as your storage. Just doing that saves having to place a bunch of chests everywhere. There are some other tricks, such as using furnaces for a floor design, hiding your crafting table in an oak ceiling, or even making a little pocket under some trapdoors holding some more helpful blocks that would take up a lot of room if they were out on display. Basically, just look at everything you need in a starter house and think how much of this actually has to be out in the open. Of course, if you have the room for it, have it out on show. You don't have to hide it away if you've got the space. Speaking of everything you need in a starter house, make sure you have everything you need for a starter house, and also make sure you don't have too much. This will obviously vary from player to player. For instance, if you're planning on using this house for a bit longer than most people would, you're going to need some more storage, possibly an enchanting setup, maybe some of the workstation blocks such as looms and cartography tables. But then on the other hand, if you're going to just be using this house for a very short amount of time, there's not a lot else you need other than a bed, a little bit of storage, furnaces, and a crafting table. Just have a think about what you will be using and don't unnecessarily clutter up your house with too much stuff, or alternatively, not give yourself enough room for everything you need. Something that's definitely worth mentioning is keeping to a block palette that's going to be easy to acquire. As I mentioned earlier, gathering resources takes a long time in the early game, so only using blocks you can quickly get your hands on might be wise. Depending on which biomes are nearby to where you set up might help you decide on your blocks for you. So if you have a dark oak forest and a taiga biome nearby, perhaps just stick to using spruce, dark oak and something you can access anywhere like cobblestone. For example, don't plan to use jungle wood if there's no jungle biome nearby, unless of course you want to go out on an adventure, and in that case, go right ahead. Similarly, you might not want to use expensive blocks like concrete or stone bricks. I know there are way more expensive blocks in the game, but just remember this is right at the beginning of your world, so having to gather those dyes for the concrete or smelt that cobblestone for the stone bricks might not be something you want to worry about just yet. Now I know I said to keep to an easily accessible block palette, but that doesn't mean you have to just use 1 or 2 blocks for the whole build. You can still use a wide range of blocks with different textures so long as you can get them simply enough. So if there's only spruce trees nearby, make sure you not only use the planks but the logs too, and the strip logs as well. On top of that, check your surroundings for some other blocks that you can find. Maybe there's some clay to make bricks, a deep cave to get some deep slate. You can even check for some craftable wooden blocks like barrels or composters that can be used in the build. All I'm saying is, just because it's a starter house doesn't mean you can't try to make it look nice. Which nicely leads me on to my next point of adding decoration. This is something that often gets neglected, especially in starter houses. Not everything has to serve as a function. It's perfectly okay to have some blocks and items that are there just to improve the look of the house and not do anything of use. I feel like the interior is more likely to fall victim to this rather than the exterior, so don't be afraid to place a nice flower pot down or hang a painting on the wall, maybe even make your bed an extra bit fancy by placing a sign at the foot of it. One of my favorite details to add into a starter house is by crafting an item frame and using it to display something of significance, like your first wooden pickaxe or the first block you mined in your world. Of course, if you don't already, be sure to add some nice decorations to the outside of the build, like a flower bed, a chimney, or even an awning outside the door. That way, it'll be more than just 4 walls and a roof. This next tip is for those of you who perhaps don't have any immediate plans to move out of your starter house, and that is to make sure you leave room for expansion. Maybe that's by eventually turning your 1-story house into a 2-story house by compromising on a lower ceiling and building 2 levels in your home. And if you can't go up, then you can always go down, done in the simplest way by having a ladder leading underground where you practically have infinite room to expand. That's what I always used to do when I first started playing Minecraft. I would just spend the whole time in my world living below my starter house in an underground base where my original house just served as an entranceway as well as an easy access bedroom. I think I mainly did this because it meant I didn't have to build exteriors, which at the time I wasn't particularly good at, so if that's what suits you best, go ahead and do the same. Something you can do to really improve the look of your starter house is to build something alongside the house itself. This could be by building a small campfire setup, a kennel for your pet dog, or some kind of small farm. It's great to do this because then the house feels a bit more lived in and homely as opposed to just a build dropped in the middle of nowhere. This is one of my favorite tips for all builds in general, not just starter houses, but in this case it can be something super simple. It doesn't have to be an entire landscaping job with custom trees and terrain. As I said before, it can just be something like a nice little farm. After all, you're going to need a food source, so why not build it attached to the house itself? Last but not least, for my final tip, how about building something a little bit different to the norm? Now, this is for those of you who are maybe a bit bored of building yet another small wooden house that looks like all the ones you've built before. How about thinking outside of the box? I've got plenty of unique starter house tutorials all over my channel that you're more than welcome to take a look at, but I'll just list a few to give you some ideas. A tent out in the woods, a tree house, a giant mushroom you can live inside of, a raft out on the water, a miniature castle, or even just building in a different style to what you're used to. On the other hand, if you don't want to build anything like that and you just want to stick with the old classic small wooden house, that is totally fine too. I personally love those kind of houses and find them very charming for a first home. So there we go everybody, those are my 10 favorite tips for building an awesome starter house in your Minecraft world. I hope this video has helped you out and that you enjoyed watching. Thank you ever so much for doing that, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.